was telling wonderful stories. He was telling everyone about God's great love. A huge, giant crowd of people came to listen. They followed Jesus all the way out to a quiet, grassy place far away from any towns. There were mummies and daddies, grannies and grandpas, and lots of children. People loved hearing Jesus speak. His words were like a beautiful song that made their hearts feel happy and full. They listened all day long, from the morning when the sun woke up until the afternoon when it started to get sleepy. They forgot all about everything else because being with Jesus was the most important thing. As the sun began to dip down low in the sky, painting it with pretty orange and pink colors, a rumbling sound started. It wasn't thunder, it was the sound of thousands of tummies. All the people were getting very, very hungry. They had been listening for so long that they had forgotten to bring any snacks. The place where they were was empty. There were no shops, no houses, no kitchens, just grass and hay.
Imagine you're walking a dangerous road far from home and suddenly everything falls apart. That's where this story begins. A man, alone, ambushed, and left for dead. Now, if you've ever felt abandoned or just invisible, listen closely. This is for you. The first to pass by is a priest. He sees the man, but maybe he's too busy, or afraid, or just too focused on his own journey. He chooses to cross the road, looking the other way. Then comes a Levite. He hesitates. Maybe he feels a tug of sympathy. But in the end, he too moves on. It's easy to judge, but honestly, how often have I been in too much of a hurry to notice someone else's pain? But then, the Samaritan enters the scene. And trust me, everyone hearing Jesus' story back then would have gasped. Samaritans and Jews, oil and water, they just didn't mix. Yet, this outsider stops. He sees a wounded man, not a label or a rival. Compassion washes over him, and he can't ignore it. He gets his hands dirty, cleaning wounds, tearing cloth to make bandages, lifting the man onto his own animal, and walking beside him step by step. He doesn't rush off after a token act of kindness. No, he stays, through the night making sure the man is cared for. And when he leaves, he promises the innkeeper, whatever it costs, I'll make it right. That's the heart of the story. It's not about who's right or who's more religious. It's about seeing someone in need and choosing to act. Jesus asks, who was the neighbor? The answer is clear, the one who showed mercy. So here's the challenge. Compassion has no boundaries. It sees no labels, no limits. May I have the courage today to cross the road and love like the Good Samaritan.
In a sunlit land of rolling hills, a loving father lived with his two sons on a busy, thriving farm. The older son was steady and hardworking, content with farm life and proud to help his father. The younger son, however, was restless, his heart full of dreams and curiosity about the world beyond their fields. While the older son found joy in tradition, the younger longed for adventure and new experiences. The father saw their differences and loved them both deeply, hoping each would find happiness in their own way. Life was peaceful, but the brothers' dreams pulled them in different directions. The father wished for unity, but he knew each son would choose his own path. Sometimes, the choices we make lead us to places we never expected, and so, the story truly begins. One morning, the younger son approached his father with a bold request. "Father, give me my share of the inheritance. I want to see the world." The father, though saddened, understood his son's longing for independence and agreed, dividing his property. The older son watched in disbelief, feeling confusion and a hint of resentment as his brother prepared to leave. Soon, the younger son packed his belongings and set off, full of excitement and hope for the future. He promised to return a success, but didn't look back as he walked away. The father let him go, giving not just money, but freedom. The older son returned to his work, the farm suddenly quieter. The adventure had begun, but no one knew what awaited the younger son. Sometimes the biggest journeys start with a single difficult goodbye. The younger son set out on his journey, his heart pounding with excitement and nerves. He traveled far from everything he had ever known, leaving behind the familiar fields and faces of home. The road was long, but his dreams of adventure and freedom kept him moving forward, step after step, toward a future he imagined would be filled with endless possibilities. At last, he arrived in a dazzling city. alive with music, color, and excitement. The city pulsed with energy, its streets crowded with people chasing their own dreams. Everywhere he looked, there was something new to see, something thrilling to experience. The air buzzed with laughter and the promise of adventure. With his fortune in hand, he quickly attracted a crowd, friends who seemed to love his generosity and the parties he threw. Night after night, he was surrounded by laughter and music, swept up in a whirlwind of celebration. It felt as if he had finally found the life he'd always wanted. He bought the finest clothes, dined at the best restaurants, and lived as if the good times would never end. Every evening brought a new adventure, a new reason to celebrate. He felt important, admired, and envied by those around him. But as the city's pleasures swept him away, he began to forget his family and the lessons of home. The noise and excitement drowned out memories of simpler days, and he lost sight of what truly mattered. He believed happiness was endless fun and attention, not realizing his money was the only thing holding his new world together. The more he spent, the more people flocked to him, eager to share in his fortune. But as the coins dwindled, so did his so-called friendships. The laughter faded, and the crowds grew thinner. Those who once cheered his name now barely glanced his way. He mistook flattery for love and spent without thought for tomorrow. Each night, he tried to fill the emptiness with more extravagance, never noticing how quickly his fortune was slipping away. The city's bright lights blinded him to the truth. He was buying company, not building real relationships. Surrounded by people, he felt more alone than ever, longing for something genuine. He was learning a hard lesson, though he didn't know it yet. The emptiness inside him grew, even as the parties raged on around him. The adventure he dreamed of was slipping through his fingers, replaced by a growing sense of loss. The city that once seemed so magical now felt cold and distant. Sometimes what feels like freedom is just another kind of trap. The walls of the city closed in, and he realized he was more lost than ever before. The city's laughter faded as his fortune ran out. Alone and uncertain, he stood at a crossroads, not knowing what would come next. And then, everything changed. Just as his money vanished, a terrible famine struck the land, turning once fertile fields into barren wastelands. The skies withheld their rain and the earth cracked under the relentless sun. Crops withered and hunger crept into every home, sparing no one, not even the wealthy or the once carefree. The laughter and music that once filled his days faded away. The parties ended abruptly, and the friends who had surrounded him during his days of plenty vanished without a trace. He was left alone in empty rooms, haunted by echoes of joy that now felt like a distant memory. Alone and hungry, the young man found himself with nothing, no home to return to, no food to fill his stomach, and no one to offer a helping hand. The city that once seemed so full of promise now felt cold and unforgiving, and every day was a struggle just to survive. Desperate for any kind of work, he took the only job he could find, feeding pigs for a local farmer. The work was filthy and degrading, a far cry from the life he had once known. He toiled in the mud, surrounded by animals, his clothes tattered, and his dignity slipping away with each passing day. Starving, he envied even the pigs' food, wishing he could fill his empty belly with the scraps they ate. Hunger gnawed at him constantly, and he realized how far he had fallen from the comfort and abundance he once took for granted. In the filth and loneliness, he remembered his father's house, where even the servants had plenty to eat and no one ever went hungry. Memories of warm meals, laughter, and the security of home flooded his mind, making his current misery even harder to bear. Regret overwhelmed him. He had traded love and security for empty pleasures and fleeting excitement. The choices that once seemed so thrilling now felt hollow, and he was left with nothing but sorrow and longing for what he had lost. He realized he'd lost everything that truly mattered, all by his own choices. The weight of his mistakes pressed down on him, and he wondered if he could ever find forgiveness or a second chance. Humbled and broken, he saw the truth. He needed to go home. Pride had led him away, but humility now called him back. He longed for the comfort of his family, even if it meant returning in shame. Sometimes it takes losing everything to see what you truly had. The emptiness he felt was a painful teacher, showing him the value of love, family, and belonging. In the darkest moment, he found clarity. The pain of his loss became the spark that lit a new hope within him, a hope that maybe, just maybe, he could return and start again. He decided to return, not as a son demanding his place, but hoping to be accepted as a servant. Even the lowest position in his father's house would be better than the life he now endured. The journey home would be long and uncertain, but hope flickered in his heart. Each step away from the pigsty was a step toward redemption, and he clung to the possibility of forgiveness. He stood up, brushed off the mud, and began the walk back, determined to face whatever awaited him with courage and humility. He had no idea what kind of welcome awaited him, but for the first time in a long while, he dared to hope that home was not as far away as it seemed. The young man rehearsed his apology as he trudged home, weighed down by shame and fear. He expected anger, maybe even rejection, but the memory of his father's kindness kept him moving. Each step was a mix of dread and hope. He was no longer the proud boy who left, but a humbled man seeking mercy. As he neared home, familiar sights filled him with anxiety. He braced himself for the worst, believing he deserved nothing more than a servant's place. Yet, a small hope remained. Perhaps his father's love would be greater than his mistakes. He was still far from the house, a tiny figure on the horizon, when something extraordinary happened. Sometimes the hardest journeys end with the most unexpected grace. The story was about to take a turn he never could have imagined. The road home was almost at its end, but the real homecoming was just beginning. While the son was still far off, his father saw him and ran to meet him, overcome with compassion and love. The father embraced his son, tears of joy streaming down his face. The son began his speech of repentance, but the father barely listened. His forgiveness was already complete. He called for the best robe, a ring, and sandals, restoring his son's honor and place in the family. The father's love was unconditional, erasing all shame and regret. He wasn't interested in punishment, only in celebrating his son's return. The servants hurried to prepare for a celebration. The lost son was home, and that was all that mattered. The father's actions spoke louder than any words. Forgiveness was given freely and dignity was restored. The family was whole again. The father ordered a grand feast, declaring, "Let's celebrate. My son was lost and is found." The entire household buzzed with joy. Music, dancing, and laughter filled the air. The younger son, overwhelmed, realized he was welcomed not as a servant, but as a beloved child. The celebration was a symbol of grace, a second chance freely given. The father's love didn't dwell on the past, it rejoiced in the return. True forgiveness isn't just words, it's a joyful embrace and a new beginning. The party was for everyone, a reminder that love restores and heals. The son learned that he didn't have to earn his father's love. It was a gift, unconditional and boundless. The family's happiness was complete, but not everyone felt the same. The older brother, weary from a long day's labor in the fields, trudged home as the sun dipped below the horizon. As he drew closer, the distant sound of music and laughter drifted through the evening air, catching him off guard. Curious and confused, he paused outside the house, peering through the window. Inside, he saw a joyful celebration, his father, servants, and neighbors rejoicing, his younger brother at the center of it all. The sight stung deeply. Instead of feeling happiness at his brother's return, a wave of anger and jealousy washed over him. He had always been the dutiful son, working hard, obeying every rule, never straying from home, yet he had never been honored with such a feast. Overwhelmed by bitterness, he refused to step inside and join the festivities. The music and laughter felt like a reminder of everything he'd been denied. Sensing his absence, the father left the party and came outside, his face full of concern and love. He pleaded gently with his older son, urging him to come in and celebrate the return of his brother. The older son's frustration poured out in a rush. "All these years I've served you, never disobeyed, yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But now, this son of yours comes back after wasting your wealth, and you throw him a grand party?" His words were sharp, his pain raw and exposed. The father listened patiently, then replied with deep affection, "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. You have never been forgotten or unloved. But we must rejoice and be glad because your brother was lost to us and now he is found. This celebration is not just for him, but for all of us, a family made whole again." The father's love was unwavering, embracing both sons despite their choices and mistakes. The older brother's pain was real and valid, his sense of injustice understandable. Yet so too was the father's joy at seeing his family restored. Sometimes the hardest thing is to forgive when you feel overlooked, to let go of resentment and join in the happiness of others. For those who stayed, forgiveness can be the greatest challenge of all. This story invites us to look through the Father's eyes, to see with compassion, to understand the pain of both brothers, and to recognize the power of unconditional love. The celebration was meant for everyone, a symbol of hope and reconciliation. If only each person could find the courage to join in, to forgive, and to be part of the joy. This story is more than a tale from long ago. It's a lesson for us all. We've all made mistakes or felt lost, like the younger son. The Father's love shows us that forgiveness and second chances are always possible. Grace isn't earned, it's a gift, freely given. The older brother reminds us not to let comparison steal our joy. Love isn't limited, there's enough for everyone. No matter how far we wander, there's always a way back home. We are loved for who we are, not what we do. May we be quick to forgive, eager to celebrate, and humble enough to accept a second chance. That's the beauty of this story, a hope that never fades.
सप्ताह का पहला दिन था। आसमान में उजाला होने लगा था और चारों ओर शांति छा रही थी। दो स्त्रियां, एक मरियम मगदलिनी और दूसरी मरियम, एक बगीचे में बने मकबरे की ओर जा रही थी। उनके हाथों में सुगंधित द्रव्य थे और उनके दिलों में गहरा दुख। कुछ ही दिन पहले उन्होंने उसे क्रूस पर मरते देखा था। यीशु, जिन्हें वे मसीहा मानते थे, को क्रूस पर चढ़ाकर एक पत्थर की कब्र में रख दिया गया था। अब वे शोक मनाने आए थे, लेकिन उन्होंने जो देखा उससे दुनिया बदलनी तय थी। जैसे ही वे कब्र के पास पहुंचे, धरती हिल गई। एक जोरदार भूकंप आया। तभी प्रभु का एक दूत स्वर्ग से उतरा। उसका रूप बिजली के समान था और उसके वस्त्र हिम के समान श्वेत थे। उसने कब्र का भारी पत्थर लुढ़का दिया और उस पर बैठ गया, मानो मृत्यु पर विजय पाकर विश्राम कर रहा हो। पहरेदार डर के मारे कांप उठे और मरे हुए लोगों की तरह गिर पड़े। लेकिन स्वर्गदूत ने स्त्रियों की ओर देखा और धीरे से कहा, डरो मत, मैं जानता हूं कि तुम यीशु को ढूंढ रही हो, जिसे सूली पर चढ़ाया गया था। वो यहाँ नहीं है, वो जी उठा है, जैसा उसने कहा था। आओ, वो जगह देखो जहां वो लेटा था। स्त्रियां आगे बढ़ी और अपनी आंखों से देखा। कब्र खाली थी, कफन का कपड़ा बड़े करीने से तय किया हुआ था। यीशु वहां नहीं थे। भय और आनंद से भरकर वे शिष्यों को सुसमाचार सुनाने दौड़े, लेकिन रास्ते में उनके सामने एक अद्भुत दृश्य प्रकट हुआ। वो स्वयं यीशु थे, जीवित, दीप्तिमान, महिमामय। उसने कहा, नमस्कार। स्त्रियां उसके पैरों पर गिरकर उसे प्रणाम करने लगी। यीशु ने कहा, डरो मत, जाओ और मेरे भाइयों से कहो कि गलील चले जाएं, वहां वे मुझे देखेंगे। और उस पल दुख खुशी में बदल गया, निराशा महिमा में। मृत्यु पराजित हो गई थी, कब्र खाली है, यीशु जीवित हैं, और अब कोई भी शक्ति, यहाँ तक कि मृत्यु भी, उन्हें रोक नहीं सकती।
In the bustling town of Jericho, where the streets were busy and the people chattered about in their daily lives, there lived a man named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was not just any ordinary man, he was a tax collector. And not just any tax collector, but the chief one.
People knew him well, and many of them did not like him, because he collected taxes for the Romans. Zacchaeus was a small man in stature, but that never bothered him. What did bother him, though, was that he had heard of someone very special coming to town, and that someone was Jesus. He had heard all sorts of marvelous tales about him, and he could not contain his excitement to see him. The day came when Jesus arrived, and the streets were filled with people eager to catch a glimpse. Zacchaeus tried to push his way through the crowd, but his tiny frame didn't help. He hopped up and down, standing on his tiptoes, but it was no use. Suddenly, an idea popped into his head. I know what I'll do, he thought to himself. With determination sparkling in his eyes, Zacchaeus ran ahead of the crowd and climbed up a big sycamore tree. From there, he could see everything perfectly. He nestled comfortably among the branches, watching as Jesus walked down the road. To Zacchaeus' surprise, Jesus stopped right under the tree where he was perched. The crowd went silent, and in an almost magical moment, Jesus looked up, and saw him. With a warm smile, Jesus said, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Zacchaeus was stunned. He felt a swirl shock, maybe. He felt a swirl of emotions, joy, shock, maybe even a little panic. But mostly, he was excited. Without hesitation, he climbed down the tree. With a grin stretched ear to ear, he welcomed Jesus to his home. Now, not everyone was happy about this. People in the crowd grumbled among themselves, saying, "Why is Jesus staying with him? Zacchaeus is a sinner." But Jesus had a heart of understanding. He came to mend broken hearts and guide everyone to kindness. Touched by Jesus' acceptance and kindness, Zacchaeus stood before Jesus and all the people declaring, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus beamed at him with pride and said, "Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." And with that, Zacchaeus found not only a friend in Jesus, but also a new heart filled with generosity and love. The town of Jericho buzzed with the tale of how kindness and acceptance can touch the hardest of hearts and turn them into something beautiful.